Good day and God bless you. Welcome to the Bible reading in chronological order. It's just such a privilege to have you with us. We thank the Lord for each of you. Thank you for joining us and for participating with us in the reading of the Word of the Lord. And I pray that the Lord would just minister to us in and through His Word today, that He would show us who He is through His Word. Today we're busy in the book of Job again, and we're going to be going through chapters 38, 39, and 40. Now, these are very important chapters, and we're going to see why. But as we look at Job's prayer, Job's desire, up to now, Job's responses have been to either rebuke his friends who have had no compassion toward him and did not believe his innocence, or it has been toward the Lord, that the Lord would hear his plea and would answer him. And though we can understand this response from Job, though we can understand his call out to the Lord to answer him, I mean, this is something that we all go through, and we ask that the Lord would visit us and speak to us. We have to really wonder now, is he ready for this? And so we go into chapter 38, and here we see that Job gets his chance to hear from God and to plead his case before the Almighty. But this is not at all the way Job thought it was going to be. The Lord now, after allowing the devil to put Job to the test, comes to Job and charges him to stand up like a man and to answer if he knows. And so now the Lord takes Job on the most amazing virtual tour of the universe from creation until the time of Job, asking Job rhetorical questions along the way, showing him how tightly balanced everything is and that God keeps everything in perfect order. The Lord shows Job his perfect balance in everything and how he determines all of these things, how he created everything in such a fine balance. Now, it is so important that we realize that even through the poetry within these chapters, there is so much scientific knowledge within here. Remember, from when the Lord starts speaking in chapter 38 and he starts going through all of creation, we see that many of the sciences within here, even through the poetry, was only discovered much later on, and some discoveries even made only in the 20th century, namely the channels in the sea and all of these things. How the Lord talks about the earth that is hanging upon nothing. When you take this section of the book of Job, don't just pass by all of the science that is within here and all of the proof that the Lord is God and that He created all of these things. One of the oldest books of the Bible showing us the sciences that we have only just discovered. And so we get into chapter 39, and here God shows His power over living creatures such as the goats and the hinds, the wild ass, the unicorn, the eagles, and others. And here we see the might of God and how He so finely balances nature and how He created these animals to perform certain things and to be able to do and accomplish certain things. Now, when it talks about the animals in the book of Job, there are some animals that are what we would describe as prehistoric, but there are also these that we just misunderstand. And the word unicorn is used not to describe what we would think as a horse with a horn, with wings or whatever like that. This is talking about an animal that we very commonly know in our age, namely the rhinoceros. And we look at the writings and the study by many scholars, and we see that it was actually describing and speaking about the rhinoceros when it described the unicorn. And so we move on to chapter 40, and here we see that the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, "Gird up thy loins now like a man, and I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me." So the Lord is challenging Job here to stand up and to speak, to answer the Lord after he had seen the great wonders and the great might of the Lord, and now to plead his case before the Lord. And so what else can Job do beside humble himself before the Lord? The Lord in this chapter speaks about abasing the proud. And then God shows Job the biggest creature created, namely Behemoth. And when we look at the description of this animal, it is very likely a brachiosaurus. And the Lord says that this is the chief of the ways of God because of his humility. Even though he is so great, even though he is so powerful, yet he is humble. But we're going to come to that in tomorrow's reading, and we're going to discuss a little bit more about this. But my favorite verse in the book of Job comes from chapter 40. And in this verse, Job says, I will lay mine hand over my mouth. Now, this is so powerful because we read this just a few days ago in Job chapter 29, verses 8 and 9, where Job is speaking about his stature in the community. And he says, the young men saw me and hid themselves. The aged arose and stood up. The princes refrained from talking and laid their hand on their mouth. They stopped themselves from saying anything because they were humbled in Job's presence. Job now sees the Lord, sees the greatness and the wisdom of the Lord, sees the stature of the Lord, and he now reverts back to that, and he says, I will lay my hand over my own mouth. I will shut up now. Basically what Job is saying. And there, showing his humility before God, showing his reverence toward God, showing his subjection to the Almighty. So this is where we're going to leave it for today. I pray that the Lord would bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you. And the Lord give you peace. God bless you as you enjoy the reading of the word today.
Chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof, when the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy? Or who shut up the sea with doors, when it brake forth as if it had issued out of the womb? When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it, and brake up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, Hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud waves be stayed. Hast thou commanded the morning since thy days, and caused the dayspring to know his place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it? It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. And from the wicked their light is withholden, and the high arm shall be broken. Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? Or hast thou walked in the search of the depth? Have the gates of death been opened unto thee? Or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Hast thou perceived the breadth of the earth? Declare if thou knowest it all. Where is the way where light dwelleth? And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? That thou shouldest take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldest know the paths to the house thereof. Knowest thou it because thou wast then born, or because the number of thy days is great? Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow? Or hast thou seen the treasures of the hail, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war? By what way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? Who hath divided a watercourse for the overflowing of waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder, to cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, on the wilderness, wherein there is no man, to satisfy the desolate and waste ground, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth? Hath the rain a father? Or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frost of heaven? Who hath gendered it? The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons? Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Canst thou lift up thy voice to the clouds, that abundance of waters may cover thee? Canst thou send lightnings, that they may go and say unto thee, Here we are? Who hath put wisdom in the inward parts? Or who hath given understanding to the heart? Who can number the clouds in wisdom? Or who can stay the bottles of heaven, when the dust groweth into hardness, and the clods cleave fast together? Wilt thou hunt the prey for the lion, or fill the appetite of the young lions, when they couch in their dens, and abide in the covert to lie in wait? Who provideth for the raven his food? When his young ones cry unto God, they wonder for lack of meat. Chapter 39. Knowest thou the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Or canst thou mark when the hinds do calve? Canst thou number the months that they fulfill? Or knowest thou the time when they bring forth? They bow themselves, they bring forth their young ones, they cast out their sorrows. Their young ones are in good liking, they grow up with corn, they go forth, and return not unto them. Who hath sent out the wild ass free? Or who hath loosed the bands of the wild ass, whose house I have made the wilderness, and the barren land his dwellings? He scorneth the multitude of the city, neither regardeth he the crying of the driver. The range of the mountains is his pasture, and he searcheth after every green thing. Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee, or abide by thy crib? Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in the furrow? Or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Wilt thou trust him because his strength is great? Or wilt thou leave thy labor to him? Wilt thou believe him that he will bring home thy seed, and gather it into thy barn? Gavest thou the goodly wings unto the peacocks? Or wings and feathers unto the ostrich, which leaveth her eggs in the earth, and warmeth them in dust, and forgetteth that the foot may crush them, or that the wild beast may break them? She is hardened against her young ones, as though they were not hers. Her labor is in vain without fear, because God hath deprived her of wisdom, neither hath he imparted to her understanding. What time she lifteth up herself on high, she scorneth the horse and his rider. Hast thou given the horse strength? Hast thou clothed his neck with thunder? Canst thou make him afraid as a grasshopper? The glory of his nostrils is terrible. He poureth in the valley, and rejoiceth in his strength. He goeth on to meet the armed men. He mocketh at fear, and is not affrighted, neither turneth he back from the sword. The quiver rattleth against him, the glittering spear and the shield. He swalloweth the ground with fierceness and rage, neither believeth he that it is the sound of the trumpet. He saith among the trumpets, Ha ha! And he smelleth the battle afar off, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Doth the hawk fly by thy wisdom, and stretch her wings toward the south? Doth the eagle mount up at thy command, and make her nest on high? She dwelleth and abideth on the rock, upon the crag of the rock, and the strong place. From thence she seeketh the prey, and her eyes behold afar off. Her young ones also suck up blood, and where the slain are, there is she. Chapter 40. Moreover the Lord answered Job, and said, Shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Then Job answered the Lord, and said, Behold, I am vile. What shall I answer thee? I will lay mine hand upon my mouth. Once have I spoken, but I will not answer. Yea, twice, but I will proceed no further. Then answered the Lord unto Job out of the whirlwind, and said, Gird up thy loins now like a man. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. Wilt thou also disannul my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me, that thou mayest be righteous? Hast thou an arm like God? Or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? Deck thyself now with majesty and excellency, and array thyself with glory and beauty. Cast abroad the rage of thy wrath, and behold every one that is proud, and abase him. Look on every one that is proud, and bring him low, and tread down the wicked in their place. Hide them in the dust together, and bind their faces in secret. Then will I also confess unto thee, that thine own right hand can save thee. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee. He eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar, the sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass, his bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow, the willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes. His nose pierceth through snares.